This is one of the least expensive speakers that EV currently makes. What corners do they have to cut to get it there? All right, so I like to say when it comes to speakers, you can have speakers be inexpensive, you can have them be loud, and you can have them sound good, but you gotta pick two. Now, in this case, I think we've kind of traded off in a bit of a, half a dozen of the other kind of situation, where we have a speaker that goes fairly loud and sounds really good doing it, right? So they didn't just completely cut the volume out and say, whatever, it sounds good for the money kind of thing. The volume coming out of this is pretty good, but the sound quality definitely keeps up with a lot of the stuff out there, right? I own speakers 2 to 3 times as expensive as this. I think they sound better, but not by as much as I would expect. And yeah, they're louder, but they're also 2 to 3 times as much as this, right? And I've used quite a bit of speakers in that kind of price bracket, and I think this definitely holds up against them. Now, it is a 250 watt RMS passive speaker, 1000 watt peak. Never run it there. I usually run between 250 watts and 500 watts. I think that's kind of the sweet spot for these guys. And depending on the gig and what we're using them for, that's usually what we do. Now, it is a 12-inch speaker. So one of the things that I will note about this is the bass frequencies. Although they sound really good, they're not very loud. Anything under 100 hertz, you're going to find is a bit lacking. Technically speaking, for -3, these go to, I think it's like 82 or 83 hertz. And that's okay. They go down at -10 to 55. So you still have the bass frequencies there, but they're not going to probably be as loud as you want them to be. So if you're using this for DJing and you're over, I'd say about 100 people, you definitely want a subwoofer underneath it. If you're using it for a band, when you've got a bass guitar and or a drummer with a kick drum, again, you're probably going to want a subwoofer underneath it. But like I recently used a pair of these on stands for a acoustic trio, big venue, about 200 people there. They held up just fine. Volume-wise, these things actually put out a pretty decent amount for what they are. I believe sensitivity on them is 94. So they're not the most efficient speaker on the market, but by far they're not the worst, right? They have a pretty good sweet spot in terms of volume output. And I think they probably would have had to sacrifice the sound quality a bit if they wanted to put out a little more dB. So I can accept that sacrifice. Because, yeah, these sound just great, right? They are in a wooden enclosure, which is also nice to see. Plastic enclosures have come a long way, but I just generally find I prefer speakers in a wooden enclosure. It does tend to make them a bit more durable in terms of physical abuse, but the finish is one place they cheaped out on these, which is too bad because they actually look great. These do not look or feel like cheap speakers. They don't sound like cheap speakers. But the finish on them is just paper thin, and you will find that within a couple weeks, if you're not using like speaker bags and things like that to kind of baby them a bit, they're going to look like you've had them for years, right? It's a known issue with these speakers particularly that they don't take abuse really well, which is too bad, but it doesn't bother me too much. If you're a DJ and you're doing a lot of weddings and you want your gear to be pristine, either baby these a bit or look into something potentially a little. If you're after EVs, maybe spend a little more, because yeah, the finish on these not the greatest. These can double as stage monitors. I say double as because they are best used as just general top speakers. We're going to use them as stage monitors from time to time. But I wouldn't recommend buying these if you just need stage monitors. There's way better options for this price or even potentially less. A proper wedge monitor, even if it is less expensive than this, is likely going to fit that bill a little bit better. But if you need something that can play double duty, they work just fine as stage monitors. They're just not ideal. I bought these for 2 reasons. One, I got a crazy good deal on them on the used market. And 2, they can double. I knew I was going to be making sacrifices using them as monitors, but we're often going to be using them as mains. Long story short, if you need something to use as mains and occasionally as floor monitors, these would fit the bill. But I wouldn't get them if all you need is stage monitors. There's better things out there for the money, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, so to sum it all up, the ELX112s are great speakers. They sound really good, and they put out a decent amount of volume. There are louder speakers if you're willing to spend the money. But in terms of sound quality, I think these are right up there with stuff even like 2 or 3 times as expensive as them, especially for everything 100 hertz and up, right? A more expensive speaker will reach lower and will put out more volume than this. But I think sound quality wise, this holds up really, really well. If you are a band and you're performing for under 100 people, you can probably get away with a pair of these. Same thing with a DJ. If you're an acoustic group, you might be able to even get away with a bigger group than that in terms of audience. But if you are a DJ or if you're a band performing to over 100 people, you might want a subwoofer underneath this thing because, the bass frequencies are its weakest link, which is to be kind of expected with the 12-inch speaker in here at this price bracket. But let me know. Have you tried this here ELX112? Did it fit the bill? Did you find it was lacking in those bass frequencies? Did you find that I'm overhyping it in terms of sound quality? Your mileage may vary, so I'd be interested to hear in the comments what you think of these speakers. Yeah, that's it for me. This is Max SPL Videos, and I will see you in the next one. Now, did I actually record everything this time?